Welcome to the Alltech Radio Podcast. This is a show where you learn about news and technology related to working in the world of IT. No matter what your job is in IT, we cover all aspects of work-life balance, job duties, salary, and everything else related to computers and technology. I am your host, Professor Robert McMillen. Along with me is my co-host, IT consultant Scot Portinga. And welcome back to the show once again, Scott.
Good afternoon, Robert. How are we doing out there?
Oh, it's another day in paradise. Actually, it is kind of a day in paradise. We've had great weather, and
It's not going to be 90 degrees.
Yeah, I've been to the Oregon coast a lot, so it hasn't been too bad, and it hasn't rained here. So, it rains here all the time. Keep away.
Yeah, exactly. And the volcano and earthquakes.
Yeah. You don't want to come here.
We'll tell you all about it. Just stay home.
Just stay. That's right. So lots of interesting stuff going on in technology. We had recently, there was a G20 meeting. Have you been following on that with all the 20 biggest economies?
I've seen a few blurbs about that. Did they get the players involved that they wanted to? I think China was kind of a problem, and we don't want Putin there.
It's funny is that China's President Xi, who we call Winnie the Pooh, he didn't show up, and he went to this special retreat for current and former leaders of China, and they chewed him out. They were upset because
what are you doing here?
That's right. They were chewing him out because the economy was tanking and real estate was tanking. The banks were falling apart, and all that kind of stuff. And that's like the first time anybody's ever criticized him without dying, I guess.
It's about time. They have this fake real estate market where they build whole cities and then don't do anything with them.
Yeah. And now they're starting to crumble. They've been empty for so long.
Yeah, that's such a waste.
But it's interesting, though. There is a computer security aspect of this, and that is that they have discussed the zero trust model, which zero trust model basically means that you don't trust anybody when it comes to IT security. And then you little by little add the ability to do certain things, to access certain things as the job requires it. But when that person no longer needs that, then you take it away. So for instance, if you were, the administrator, you don't have the administrator rights the entire time. You only have it when you go to create a user, change a password, whatever it is, and then you take it away. And that works the same in Azure as well as on-premises Active Directory.
Yeah. Actually, I had one case where I had to give outside users administrative access to an accountant server. So I made a special group, made a special OU, and then went in there and just picked apart all the rights. They could do what they needed to do, but that was it. They couldn't shut down the server. They couldn't access the drives. They couldn't do that. They could only do what they had to do.
Yeah, and that is in the terms of IT, a fairly new concept of role-based access control, where you specify what roles people can have rather than just making them part of a group and giving that group access. You give each individual person that needs it or group that needs it a specific role that allows them to do certain things. That's a good job. That is the way that things are going. So that was one of the zero trust. The zero trust model is one of the things that they talked about at the G20 to help protect things like government websites. And, they put pretty much everything on the internet, even though you and I begged them to not do that for the last 20 years.
Why are you doing this? You don't need to do this. Why? Just because you can doesn't mean you should.
That's right. That's right. So trying to keep countries like Russia and China from hacking into all of our different places. Now, I know it's not just them. There are, and I'm sure there's people from the U.S. and other countries that do that as well. But these two are the most prolific. And of course, North Korea too, Iran, does some of that. I was just thinking the other day, remember the Stuxnet virus?
Stuxnet!
Yeah. We had what was that? A voice changer, and we pretended to be the Stuxnet virus. It was pretty funny, and that kind of stuff. So Iran, whichever way I want to say it, they are now on the offensive when it comes to that kind of stuff too. So. I thought that was interesting that leaders of the world are finally getting around to being concerned about security and mentioned the zero trust model. mean, that's pretty big for people like that.
It's about time. I mean, they have been dragged kicking and screaming into the 21st century.
Yeah, exactly. And one of those things that we also recommended never make it to the internet, and of course it has, it was inevitable, are cars. Cars, the auto industry has opened, up to hackers the ability to do all kinds of things, including steal cars using various different apps. I don't know if you saw Hyundai's, it became so easy to hack and steal that insurance companies didn't want to insure them anymore.
Yep, I heard about that. That is, why are you doing it? What, you think just because you put a good password on it, it'll be fine? What are you thinking?
So many ways to bypass passwords. There is a USB drive that you can buy for $150. I'm not going to give the name of it because
that's good.
It's so insidious. But what it does is it has all these tools on them. The tools are free, but just to put the way that this programmer put it all together, he charges $150 for USB. It's a small company. He just sells them, one at a time, and but you can, certainly go online and buy the thing. So you take this USB drive and you plug it into any USB port, and it immediately cracks any password you have because it uses tools that bypass the passwords.
just start running scripts and get into the SAM file.
Yeah, it just gets right into it. I saw it for myself. I didn't believe it at first, but it was on a Windows 10 fully patched computer. It was about a year ago, and they just plugged it in, and boom, it logged in.
Oh, and that makes it even worse. I mean, people will take USB drives they find in the parking lot.
Right.
I wonder what's on this.
Exactly.
And I actually did find one years ago, and I ended up finding it was for another resident there in the business complex. But I can't plug it into this machine. I ended up getting a Chromebook.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Because then it won't be able to hit everything, normally you plug it into that, and then you can actually read it.
Can Chromebooks read NTFS, or there was a thing with like FAT32?
This one was FAT32. I'll have to try the NTFS and see if that works.
Yeah, because last time I looked, neither Mac, Linux, Unix, none of those could read NTFS, but maybe that's changed, since that time. And this is basically the way that you format and partition a drive, whether it's a USB drive or an internal drive, anything like that. There's different ways to do it, and certain operating systems support, some ways, and certain operating systems don't.
Yeah, I've got a couple drives that I keep formatted in exFAT. So that they can be read by either Mac or PC. So if you've got like PDF files or documents, you can use them on both.
Yeah, if it has the word FAT on it, usually Mac and Windows can pretty much manage. Not all Linux can, but Mac usually can.
Right. Yeah, who uses Linux?
Yeah. So what the big news is about these cars, finally getting around to adding security. So President Biden actually went in and said, "Hey guys," to the auto manufacturers, from now on, you need to be secure when you create these things. And that's the worst thing is we talked about this so many times over the years where now that microwaves and refrigerators are now online, you've got to add security into them. And so cars are going to be forced into adding security, and you're going to have to be certified at some point. Not going to happen right away, but they are going to have to be certified before they're going to be allowed to be sold. Certified to have some minimum level of security. So the government is either going to pay to have this done, or just going to force the car manufacturers to do it, or one way or the other. This article from CBSAustin.com says we're going to pay for it as consumers one way or the other, whether it's through taxes or whether we when we go to buy the computer or buy the car. And until that happens, until that security happens, it would be good in the next year or two as this starts rolling out to, when you go to the car dealership to buy a car, to say, does this have any type of agency certification before I buy it? Because I don't want my insurance rates to go high. I don't want my car to get stolen. There's also ways that you can hack into the car, listen to what people are saying or take control of a camera. I mean, it goes on and on. And you may not care that it's happening, but what if all of a sudden you're accelerator starts taking off,
Yep.
or your brakes slam, on. That can happen.
Yeah. When they get control, if they get control of everything, you're in trouble.
Yeah. So,
And the problem I see coming up too is upgradability. Like the really cheap Android phones,
Yep.
they come with, this version of Android, and that's it. It's not going any further. And as security evolves, they need to be upgradable.
that's true. Whether this can happen through a cell phone, by connecting it to a cell phone with Bluetooth, updating the car, or by going into the dealership, one way or another, the cars are going to have to be updated the same way a computer is.
Yep.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I have the Microsoft Duo phone. It has the two screens, and Microsoft just said, "Hey, you know what? Those things have finally hit the 3-year mark, so we're not going to update them anymore."
Can you imagine the lines by auto dealerships on Patch Tuesday?
Yeah, that's true. And then also, what if a car gets to be 10 years old? Will the manufacturer refuse to update it anymore?
Yep.
That would be terrible on a car you spent tens of thousands of dollars on. I mean, a lot of people keep their car more than 10 years, like Scott does.
Exactly. Well, they do it on computers. They do it on phones. Yeah, they'll do it on cars. They'll say it's not worth our while. We're not going to bother with it.
That's right. That's right. I was watching The Mule last night. You ever see it with Clint Eastwood?
I don't think I've seen The Mule.
I think I got about a half an hour left on the movie, so I don't even know how it ends. But he was driving one of those really old Ford pickup trucks, the kind that was not online in any way, had no app to control it. I mean, it was crazy, right?
It has a distributor. It doesn't have electronic ignition.
Right. So he starts making money by driving a car for Mexican cartels for drugs. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden he's in one of these really fancy pickup trucks with all the, the electronics and he's all of a sudden becoming like computer savvy on how to do things. It's pretty funny to see a 90-year-old guy go from not knowing anything to all of a sudden becoming this guy who understands all this stuff.
So the program is VCR.
Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of different computer security companies out there. But this company called Benzinga.com reminds me of Bazinga from the Big Bang Theory, but Benzinga.com, they came out with a list of the largest manufacturers of computer security. Well, let's just say the largest computer security market in the world. And who do you think is on top? I just take a guess. I mean, there's no points off if you if you don't get it.
I mean, Cisco comes to mind, but
Cisco's on the list. Absolutely,
on the list, but it's probably not top.
Not number one.
There has been so many companies that I get all these emails from these companies. Oh, we're the best. Oh, we're the best.
Yeah,
and I don't even have time to take a look at them and to figure out which would really be the best for my client. It's frustrating.
Well, what was really surprising, they came in at $10 billion a year. Now this is
Nabisco, right?
This is just for security only, nothing to do with any other part of their business. $10 billion last year. It was Microsoft.
Really?
And isn't that interesting? They create the software with the vulnerabilities, and then they charge you to protect you from them.
Yep.
Yeah. Microsoft, the number one security provider in the world.
That's kind of scary.
That is scary, right? So F5, I thought was interesting, came in. Yeah. I thought they were like a load balancing company. I didn't know them.
I think they have done that in the past, but that's not their main focus anymore.
I had no idea. Sophos, of course, that's not a big surprise, but it's kind of surprising it comes in at number 3 just because they don't have as many products out there as some of the other ones out there, but I guess they just have really good marketing. Broadcom, which is really weird. They're number 4. Broadcom, they make...
Aren't they one of the holes that we're trying to patch?
Yes. They make network cards. Broadcom also just bought VMware. Isn't that interesting? Yes. Broadcom now owns VMware. And then Cisco Systems is next. So they came out at 5th. But yeah, Checkpoint, which is funny because Checkpoint used to be number 1. Checkpoint is a Israeli-owned company, but they're sold by companies all over the world. I don't think a lot of people realize it's Israeli-owned, but it's interesting because the Israelis seem to have a really good handle on cybersecurity for their own protection, of course. And so at one point, they owned 65% of the market. This is like early 2000s. They owned 65% of the market. But it was so expensive to buy their firewalls that, and then plus just to maintain them was thousands of dollars a year in licenses.
Oh yeah, well you got to pay the high priests of Checkpoint to maintain them.
Yeah. Then Cisco sort of took over and they became the big player. Now it's kind of spread out, not just security wise, but firewall wise. It's kind of spread out amongst a lot of different firewall, makers. Palo Alto, of course, has really come on strong. They have super expensive firewalls as well, but they do a lot more stuff than some of the other companies
they do more big ISP level stuff too.
Yeah. I was talking to a client about a year ago, and I thought it was really interesting. They said that they, had Palo Alto at their previous company where they worked, and I said, okay, and they said they had a pair of highly available, firewalls. So if one firewall went down, the other one picked up. I'm like, okay, well, that's not all that unusual for an enterprise, organization. I've set that up for companies as well. And they said, oh, but you don't understand. These were all virtual. Like, what? It's like, yeah, you can go into Azure and AWS and you can buy a virtual Palo Alto firewall and other, networking products. It doesn't physically exist. I said, how much did it cost? He said, $26,000 each. What are these NFTs? I mean, what?
Wow.
What is this? And so then I went on to Azure myself, and I found out not only Palo Alto, but you can go, get Cisco virtual firewalls too. I thought that was crazy.
WatchGuard's been doing that for small offices. You can do a firewall in the cloud.
Yeah. I can understand that, but buying them at tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, I want something crazy in front of me that I can see for $26,000.
Yeah, it's just so it's hard for me to wrap my head around buying something virtual that costs that much. There's some things I don't think I would care. Like virtual machines. Fine, I could do those on premises. I could do those in the cloud. I don't care that I can't physically see them. They're just software on a computer. But a firewall, that just seems so foreign to me that you would do that.
And in my mind, it's still kind of risky. You're routing your traffic through a piece of software, then into your network.
Right.
What if, and maybe they can do it. I don't know if they can do it yet, but what if they get around that? You're sitting there going happily, merrily along, thinking all your traffic is coming through that firewall when it's not.
Yeah, it's the same thing with Microsoft changing the rules on BlackBerry. They went in and said, all right, we're going to break BlackBerry today with our Windows update. Then BlackBerry's put out a patch to fix their kind of thing. What if they did that same kind of thing to virtual devices in the cloud? Like, you know what, we're in competition with you now for this firewall, which they're not, but we're just going to change the rules.
It happens every Patch Tuesday. I get certain things that just don't quite work yet. And this whole thing that you can apply the updates and then reboot when you want.
Yeah.
No, you can't. There are things that just don't work. They won't work until you reboot. Or there may be an update, maybe your vendor will make an update and that will affect your machine, or vice versa. Yeah. It's a battle.
See, if you've got virtual machines, which of course pretty much everybody does, you'll need to go in and do a checkpoint if it's Windows, like Hyper-V, or a snapshot if it's VMware, or most other companies, before you do that reboot. Because if all of a sudden it doesn't reboot anymore, you have that go back capability. You can say, oh, let's restart for everything was prior to that to that update. Yeah. Especially domain controllers. I mean, you do not want to be restarting those things after Windows updates until you confirm it all worked.
And back when we all had our own Exchange servers too, it's like you don't even apply the patches till somebody else does.
Right.
Let somebody else, hit their head against it before you go out and actually
or you have your own
bring down
sandbox
your
device,
company.
something like that.
Yeah.
So it's funny. I did some courses for Exchange Server 2016 several years ago for LinkedIn Learning, and those did pretty well because people at that time, a lot of them still had Exchange servers. And then I did the update to Exchange Server 2019, and almost nobody watches those things because everybody's moved off to Exchange Online, Microsoft 365. So I said to LinkedIn Learning, I said, I should do a course on Exchange Online. Like, what? No, okay, all right. Well, I guess we could try that. So I
with
finished
the latest versions of Exchange, though, it became so close to Exchange Online because it was all done through a web browser.
Right. Oh, yeah, I hated that.
You didn't
too.
have their regular consoles. And,
Right. The web browser would break all the time too. The GUI, when they had the regular application up until Exchange 2010, that was great. But when they moved to the web version, it would constantly break. You'd have to do everything through PowerShell. It was terrible. The Exchange Online works a lot better.
Yeah. What was funny is I would do some, Exchange work and have to download mailboxes for archiving purposes.
Yep.
And the tool that Microsoft put out wouldn't work with Edge.
Oh, that's maddening.
I had to use Internet Explorer.
That is maddening. I've done that. I know exactly what you're talking about. That I've had to do that too. Now, the new Edge, was this recently or was this the old Edge?
This was the old Edge.
Oh, okay.
The new one it does work on. They finally fixed it, but it was about time.
Yeah, it reminds me of all those Cisco devices you could never open up anymore because it said, this uses outdated Java technology. You're not going to open this. And you'd have to go find an old version of Java and uninstall anything that you had done previously. We had a computer like that at one client where we got it just right for the Cisco devices that we're trying to access because, the old Java. And then we virtualized it and then shut it down. So the only time we ever turned that thing on was when we needed to, go in and access a Cisco device and then, or an IBM device. They had the same problem. And then we would shut it down afterwards. So it couldn't be updated.
I had one client that I worked with and I had to be really careful letting anybody else touch them because they had some custom build applications on certain versions of Java that could not be updated.
Right. Yeah.
So it's like you have to sit down with anybody that goes out on site. Okay, while you're out there, do not ever update Java. We will break everything and they will fire us.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Now they seem to be using other technologies. I mean, there's still Java out there, but there's a lot of places that have dropped that, altogether, which is good. Not enough of them have dropped it, however. Pretty much if it's Oracle based, I don't want it. They have messed up so many things in my experience that they're also very litigious. So that's why I always have to say, in my experience, you don't want to just put yourself out there.
Yeah, it's not for everybody. But I wouldn't do it again.
Yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. So speaking of hacks, have you ever shopped at Forever 21? My guess is no.
No.
Well, according to CPO magazine, Forever 21 had a data breach that impacted over 500,000 current and former employees. Now, first off, how do they have that many employees? It's an apparel, it's just a place that sells clothes, right?
But it must grind through them pretty quickly.
That's what I was thinking is if you have 500,000 employees and you have a company that probably only has 10 or 20,000 employees currently working, that means that you probably have trouble keeping your employees, but I don't know for sure how many they have.
Yeah,
currently.
We don't want to draw judgment on that or anything.
It just smells of
But if they get people
burn.
for summer jobs or for Christmas time stuff, they could get a lot of part-time people.
Yeah. 500,000. Unfortunately, it doesn't say customers. It just says employees. But maybe now, if it did say customers, then I would completely understand the 500,000 number because a lot of people, will go in and buy just one thing. But based in California, they stock apparel, beauty, and home products. 500 stores. All right, so 500 stores, you probably have 10 people per store. That's not not a lot. I'm thinking maybe the clients got hacked too, and this article just may not include it in there. So It says that so far none of the information has been misused for purposes of fraud or identity theft so far. But what they don't understand.
How would you know that?
Yeah, exactly. What they don't understand is that these kinds of things go for sale on the dark web. And when you have 500,000 people to go through, it takes a while, you know.
Exactly. It's a lot of time and effort in that. So
and the type of
compromised yet is the operative word.
Exactly. And the type of information that's stolen is probably not banking passwords and stuff like that. It's social security addresses and stuff, that you would normally fill out in an employee application. And you need, as the hacker, you would need to basically pretend you are this person in order to get credit cards ordered and other things that you can use for identity theft. Identity theft is not a quick thing. It takes time. It takes skill, to do social engineering. And so it could be 2, 3, 4, 5 years before they get through these 500,000 people.
Yeah, if they do it right, which and you don't want to encourage them, but they'll take it slow, because if they have 10 little blips on somebody's account in a month, they'll notice that.
Yeah,
if they have one every other month, it's like that's okay.
You may not realize it. They may have only gotten through 5,000 out of 500,000. Yeah, you definitely you would have a hard time noticing that.
The gift that keeps on giving.
Yeah, I signed up probably 15 years ago, maybe longer, for Norton online security. So basically what they do is it's changed names a couple of times too.
Right.
They monitor the dark web for various different things. And every quarter, unless something happens, but every quarter they'll email me saying, here's your security report. And it shows a good 20 different things have been compromised, but they don't do anything about it. They're just letting you know, Of course, if anything got stolen money wise or bank account information wise, it includes an insurance policy that's supposed to pay me back. But I'm not seeing a lot of people online who are getting that money paid back. If you check them out on Better Business Bureau and some other, forums and stuff like that.
There's little if, ands, and therefores in the EULA that make it, sorry, you didn't do proper due diligence, therefore we don't have to pay out.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. But even more so is, you didn't sign up for the deluxe package.
You wanted the deluxe package. That's different.
When I first signed up, there was one package. It was $100. And then as time went on, they started adding things, and basically all they did was they took the original package and they started splitting it up into other pieces. Yeah, they added some things too, but it's the original package that no longer protects you the same way the original package did. Right. And so at least that's what I've found, as I've gone through it. I'd love to have somebody from Norton tell me otherwise, but that's what I'm seeing. So it's because of the fact they haven't really raised the price that much. I think it's only about $130 a year now. I keep it on there more for amusement, than anything else. I mean, just to see how they
stuff to talk about on the radio.
Yeah, there you go. It's not very much money. So one thing interesting I found out about credit cards, because was funny. One of my credit cards was breached years ago, and yet Norton still figured out a way to charge my card for the annual fee. And I'm like, how did they do that? I mean, I canceled that card and I ordered a new one. And then, we had another card recently that, had an issue. And so what I found out when you call, and this is something they will not tell you unless you specifically ask them. So when your card is breached, there is what's called a hard delete and a soft delete. Have you heard about this, Scott?
I have not.
Yeah, this was news to me too. And it's only because, I had asked them about this, because I said, hey, this card got, breached for some reason. Somebody got a hold of the number. I remember a couple months ago, I lost my card at the airport, which was really dumb. And so, but fortunately I went into the app and I put a freeze on anything.
Good.
So when I called them up, I said, hey, are my regular monthly charges going to still go through if I cancel this card? And they said yes, because we're just going to do a soft delete. And I said, wait a minute, what's the difference? They said, if you've already entered your card into a website to be auto charged, even though the number has changed, it will continue being charged.
That is wrong.
Yeah, that is a soft delete. That is the default, and they will not tell you that when you go to order a new card. So if the hacker, the person who has got your number, has already gone in, and which is what happened to us, it's already gone in to say Microsoft or whatever, and started buying stuff on a regular basis. That information is still going to go through. Those charges are still going to happen. So I said, whoa, how do we make that not happen? And he said, that's no problem. We'll just do a hard delete. Well, why didn't you say something?
If somebody cancels a card, you would think that would be the default.
Yeah. So a hard delete makes you re-enter everything into all those sites, Netflix and, Amazon and all that kind of stuff. But that's the safe way to go. If the hacker's already gotten into websites and set this up, then
I didn't know that. You didn't know till you asked. I mean, and we're fairly tech savvy.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah. Wow, that really hurts people.
Yes. So keep that in mind.
So all those hot dogs and pizzas at the airport were not your purchases?
They were not. They were not. Interesting thing. We got election season coming on, right?
Oh yeah.
Yes. So
Lovely.
there's multiple ways you can, when you go in to vote, you could do the punch out thing, which is really what Republicans want you to do, because a lot of people would be like, well, if I have to do that, I'm not going to come in. There's the punch, where you take a pin and you punch out what you want. And then there's
the hanging Chad.
The hanging Chad. That's right. And then you could mail in your ballot, right? And then but what a lot of people did, especially on the East Coast, is they went in and pressed a button on a machine, and the machine, would say, would pick whichever one you clicked for your vote. Right. So that's really the way a lot of people did it. But I see a lot more people going to the mail-in thing because it's just more convenient, and it still has a lot of protections. It's on paper. Right. It still has a lot of protections against wide, spread fraud. But what some people are saying, once again, Scott, you shake your head, and what they're talking about is internet voting. No, just no.
I used to like going. The voting was like 2 blocks away. It was up at the Presbyterian Church. The League of Women Voters had people out there, and they had some snacks and things, and it was a community thing. I liked it.
Now you got to have armed guards, and then you've got people standing outside yelling at the people inside that they're ripping off somebody, and it's crazy. So all those nice people that you knew, they'll probably be like, I don't need this.
Exactly. They were volunteers.
Yeah.
They'd say, I'm doing this for people, but I'm getting abused, and why would I want to put myself through that?
Exactly. In some cases, it's dangerous too. On top of it. Yep. So, some computer security professors, and I would be one of those that joins in with them, began meeting at the University of California, Berkeley, with the goal of setting a baseline list of standards for how ballots down the road could be safely returned online. Oh, well, I wouldn't be with them on setting up a security standard. I'm just saying, don't do it.
Yeah. Just because it's theoretically possible. I mean, everyone is going to need their own personal certificate.
Yeah.
To prove they are who they are. But the thing is, people are going to get so lazy about storing that certificate, or letting other people have access to it. Oh yeah, it's just
the best voting
system. This is being pushed by internet software people. Right?
Oh, it's going to happen, Scott. I know. We're going to be eventually, voting in ferrets and, and monkeys and the dog, the family pets. It's eventually going to happen. And Russia is going to be deciding who it is that we're going to be voting in, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, that person that they put in jail because she exposed that.
Yeah.
They didn't say what she exposed was wrong.
Right.
They just put her in jail for telling us.
Just for telling us about it. Yep.
Yep.
So the best way of voting I have ever seen, as foolproof as it can possibly be, is you remember the early days of voting in Iraq. after we went in and created democracy by force.
Try to.
So the early days of voting, they had people go in and dip their finger into purple dye. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
And that proved whether they voted or not. So there's no way that you could wash that off and come back and do it again. I mean, the only way you could do is cut your finger off, which nobody's really wanting to do.
I'm
Maybe
not cutting
so.
my finger off for that.
It's possibly some people want to do that, but
That's true.
but that's I only got 10 votes here.
Exactly.
Unless they count toes too. So I thought that was a great way to do it. I mean, it's pretty much foolproof on that.
Solid, not nobody can fake it.
Don't see that happening here, but I'd be all for it.
Yep, we'll have to start a program for that.
Do you remember a couple of months ago, Microsoft's email got hacked, and there was lots of different things going on saying, it was denial of service from some country that they didn't want the United States getting involved in, and blah blah blah.
Mm-hmm.
So this came out recently. It says China's Microsoft email cloud hack began with a 2021 computer crash. So this, according to Wall Street Journal, they said that cryptographic keys that hackers used to access Microsoft's cloud was stored by mistake on the company's corporate network for 2 years. So let me explain what cryptographic keys do. Is when you go to create a certificate, you use a key, a private key, to create the certificate. And if anybody gets a hold of that key, they can create their own certificates based on your key, or they can get access to your particular certificate, gain access to things that they shouldn't be gaining access to, and then make changes. So that's a high level view of a cryptographic key. You don't want to leave that online.
Oh no, it's on a secure USB stick that is encrypted, and it's in a fire safe.
Yeah, I mean, there's what you can also even split that into multiple pieces, and then onto multiple different USB keys and put them in separate places. Not that anybody would do that, but I have seen that happen with the trusted platform modules, the TPMs, for using BitLocker to encrypt hard drives. So that they do give you that option to split the keys up. So I thought that was kind of interesting. But this happened to Symantec years ago. They let their cryptographic key get out. They're the ones that create a lot of certificates for people companies all over the world, similar to Network Solutions and GoDaddy and stuff like that. So their private key got out, and so hackers started creating, fake certificates, but they were backed up by a real key. So it was pretty easy to go ahead and fool a lot of people a lot of times to that. It's like when you go to Amazon.com. You don't get any errors or any warnings that you've got a certificate that's fake, right? It says, oh yeah, this is a valid certificate. You are at Amazon.com. But if I were to create a fake Amazon site and use a certificate that was considered valid because I stole the private key, now when you go to myamazon.com, you're putting in all your credit card information, username and password, everything else that I can use to go and steal everything you've got. So that's the kind of risk that you have, that Microsoft somehow let this happen. So apparently they had a computer crash in 2021 that had this information on it. When it came back up, nobody realized it, and then China, they infiltrated one computer, and from there they bounced around to all the different computers and servers until they found this thing, and then they used it to make crashes. I don't think they meant to crash it. I could be wrong about that. I think they just meant to use it to steal stuff, and I think they just got a little overzealous. And ended up causing the crash. But I could be wrong about that as well. When you don't have a valid certificate, what Microsoft has done is they made it so nothing works right. You can't open up Outlook. You can't open up any web pages from Microsoft, like Outlook on the web, SharePoint Online. None of that stuff works anymore. So you can't even get into the admin console to make any changes. Without it, you can't. PowerShell doesn't even work right when you try to remote into Azure or Exchange Online. That's that seems a lot more plausible to me than some third world country saying, "Oh yeah, we hacked Microsoft because we didn't want the U.S. to be in our business."
No, I don't think so.
Yeah. So according to FT.com, I forget what the name. Financial Times. Yeah, Financial Times. Skilled workers to combat the rise of cybercrime. We need more. We need more cyber professionals. ISC Squared, which they put out, the CISSP, Certified Information Security Specialist, and a bunch of other, certificates or certifications. And they said that there are 4.7 million people that are now cybersecurity professionals, which is pretty good. But only 70% of these roles are filled. Another 30% are still needed. So we need millions more people to get into cybersecurity.
Hey, you want a good career? There you go.
There you go. One thing to keep in mind, though, is, let's say you go to your local college or your university or even online and you get a degree. And you're like, okay, I'm now a cybersecurity specialist because I have a bachelor's or, whatever type of degree in cybersecurity. You go to work your first job and you find out it isn't all that exciting.
That could be, yes. There's log files and more log files.
That's the thing, is there's so many log files. Now you're supposed to use applications to go through. They're called SIEM applications, which are supposed to filter all that out for you. But nothing replaces someone looking at log files and finding patterns and things like that of various hackers trying to get into the network. So, and really it's the way you prove yourself that you know what you're doing by, finding things while you're in there. And I've had students that have gone on to cybersecurity degrees and they come back to me like, yeah, I love my profession, but that first year was terrible. That first year, all I did was look at log files.
Well, it's a dirty job, but somebody's got to do it.
Yeah, well, it's sort of the help desk of the cyber world.
Yeah, that's where it starts. You collect the data, and then somebody with more experience, that you hope to be sometime, is going to analyze that data and make some sense of it.
That's exactly right. So, have you been to San Francisco a bunch of times?
Probably 5 or 6 times.
5 or 6 times. Okay. I've been there more times just because of various different clients I had over the years. But one of those I went to was Tivoli. You remember Tivoli?
I remember that.
Yeah. So I had to go to a Tivoli conference. Did you go to that too?
I don't think I went to that. Did Fritz go with you?
Yeah. I think it was Al and Fritz and myself, years ago when we all worked together at PAC Info. Yeah. So they had a San Francisco Tivoli, conference, which was a really big deal. And every year, it got bigger and bigger until finally it didn't. And then it just dissolved. Yeah. Well, what's interesting is they're starting a new developer conference, but it's something that is probably going to last a lot longer. OpenAI to host first developer conference in San Francisco. I think this is going to be huge. So this is according to Bloomberg. They're going to have their first developer conference this fall for ChatGPT. So for those of you who aren't familiar with ChatGPT, the open source part of it is that the reason why there's so many different websites that have started their own type of artificial intelligence is because they base it on the free OpenAI, open artificial intelligence, that came out. So you can take OpenAI and then you can add your stuff on top of it. You can add your shell, you can add, additional, programming to it and charge for it if you want. You just can't charge for the open source part of it. So now we have literally hundreds of websites that do AI, all different flavors of it, and it's all based on this OpenAI standard that came out. So it's interesting that they're going to have their very first conference in San Francisco. This is going to be one of those things where, you can get into it this year, but you're going to have a hard time with that in the future.
Well, and going back to the whole IT business in general, I
Yeah.
think a lot of people get kind of disillusioned that, oh, I got my degree, I can go out and do this. Oh no, things change constantly. You have to learn constantly. You have to keep up on stuff. And I know a lot of people have looked at it and said, oh, that's too much work.
Yeah. Yeah, you do have to stay up on top of it. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, absolutely. So I thought that was interesting that they're having their very first open ad, and that's going to be a big one.
Yep.
If you want to get on the ground floor or something, that is something to. I realize it's been out for almost a year, but trust me, it's a couple of years from now, it's going to look completely different than it even does now.
Oh, that was version 1.0. This is actually a better time to get into it. They've worked out some bugs.
Yeah, that's a good point. That is a good point. And things are happening on a much faster scale now. When you look at computers version 1.0, it was another decade before 2.0 came out. Now we're looking at months or weeks, before major changes are happening. What's that?
You had mentioned Tivoli, and the one thing that came to mind was Tivoli backup.
Yeah.
I remember talking with Fritz about it. That's his favorite backup. He loves that backup. Have you ever seen the pricing on that?
Oh, so expensive.
Oh my God.
So expensive. Very few people know how to, or would be able to pay for something like that.
Oh yeah, exactly. The clients, as good as it is, it's not going to sell, and it didn't sell.
What's interesting is that it lasted long. Tivoli backup lasted longer than the Tivoli product did.
Yeah. Yep.
And, once you purchased it, it was such a big investment. You might as well just keep using it. It was definitely a good product. No doubt about that. Mm-hmm. I'll bet that some other products, have come out afterwards and it was based on that and they just call it something else.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, I did the dumbest thing one year. So, but I didn't know I did it. So what happened was I got a call from this company and they said, "Hey, we'd like to interview you. We're going to call you once a month for the next year, and we're going to pay you $500 for 15 minutes just to ask you questions about backups." And I said, "Well, why would I not do that?" So the first month comes, they ask me, for 15 minutes, we talk about backups, and they ask my opinion on this, that, and the other thing. It was scripted on his side. He didn't really know the technical terms of anything. He was just kind of, doing what he was told to do. So I was giving my technical answers. He was writing them down and stuff like that. So this goes on for about 3 or 4 months. And finally he asks me, he says, "Have you ever used Veeam?" Now, Veeam was brand new back then. It was, this goes back like 12, 13 years. Veeam was brand new. And it had only, I think they were in their, towards the end of their very first iteration of it. They're getting ready for their version 2 that was going to be coming out. And they said, "Hey, what do you think of Veeam?" And tell us, what you think. Well, they had already asked me about a whole bunch of other products, so I didn't realize that they were being paid by Veeam to do this.
So they kind of eased you into this.
Exactly. I mean, I'd already been paid like a couple $1,000s, right? By this point. So they said, what do you think of Veeam? And I said, well, I didn't have a lot of experience with it, but it just seems kind of like the same thing, just packaged, differently. Veeam was created to back up virtual machines, and then they also decided, hey, let's also back up physical machines. Whereas other products like Backup Exec and Commvault and all these other ones, they were created to back up physical machines, and they're like, let's also do virtual machines. So it really depended on what was more important to you, because one did it better than the other, depending on which product. And so I explained that to him, and he's like, okay, great. All right, so by the way, today's our last meeting. I'm like, well, what do you mean?
Because you didn't tell me how great Veeam was.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I did not tell him how great Veeam was.
If they had just given you a script, it would have gone better.
Yeah, if you just would have whispered, say something good about Veeam.
Yeah.
I probably would have kept that going through the whole 12 months, but no. Anyway, I thought that was kind of funny. YouTube is upsetting people again with more changes. I got this email from YouTube because I have a YouTube channel. Coming close to about 50 million views, so definitely it's doing well. And I got this email from them saying, "Hey, we're making our ad experience better." And I'm like, oh, they're about
you are.
They're about to make things a lot worse. just to make more money. I've been through this before. I know exactly how this works, but it assured me that this is a better thing. A couple of days later, this article from Engadget comes out. YouTube is testing fewer, longer ad breaks on its TV apps. So they're testing out less breaks, but it's gonna be more like watching TV. Watching TV where you have 4-minute breaks, 2-minute breaks, and they're not going to be skippable.
So you're saying they're going to give me time to go grab some popcorn, get another Coke,
Yeah, you gain some weight, why not?
Exactly.
So they're going to make it so you're going to be watching a lot of commercials, and you're not going to be able to skip through them. And they're going to be long commercials too. Yes. So the idea is to show you ads in a way that's better aligned with each platform where you watch YouTube. On mobile, you might be more inclined to watch content like shorts in more bite-sized chunks. All right. Well, it doesn't make sense on shorts to give a 2-minute, commercial break, right? Because those are only a minute long. So 5 seconds is probably as much as you're going to get on that. But if you have something that is going to last, according to this, 21 minutes, you're probably going to see, a long, like a couple minute break, maybe longer, and you're not going to be able to skip through it. So I'm reading on some websites like on Reddit and some other ones. The people who are watching this are very unhappy. They do not want to see long ad breaks that you cannot skip through. So that is that is what's happening. Scott, anything you would like to add?
Well, I think some of these services underestimate the amount of commercials that people like you and me of our generation will sit through.
Yeah.
There's some services that say, for if you want to do the premium stuff with no commercials, pay us $10 a month.
Sure.
Like, nah, I'll do with the commercials. I grew up on commercials. Commercials are part of the deal.
There you go.
I'm fine.
There you go. Yeah, you just figure that's the way it works. But yeah, the younger generations, they'll be like, I don't even know what commercials are. I'm not watching those.
Commercials? What?
They've had ad blockers on since they were born. Of course, YouTube blocked ad blockers too. So if you have an ad blocker on, they'll be like, sorry, we're not showing you any more videos until you turn that off.
Yep, I've seen that.
And I'm okay with that just because I make money off it, but I know most people are not. So I feel your pain.
No. Yeah, but the thing is, how do they think this works? Not everything is free.
That's true. But what upsets me is if I pay for cable, for instance, I pay for certain streaming services, and you still end up getting commercials on some of those.
Yeah, in the beginning, it's like with cable, you didn't have commercials. That was the big selling point. Now it's like, we can only see this on cable, so we have to get cable.
Right.
So they're going to put the commercials in there too.
And the NFL, I think they're going to take a hit. There are certain games you're only going to watch if you have Amazon Prime or YouTube TV. I don't think they're going to be as popular 5 years from now as they are now. Just because they're making it harder and harder. Like boxing. Boxing was huge in the 70s and early 80s. I watched it as a kid. I loved it. I haven't watched a boxing match ever since they put it on pay-per-view,
Yeah, it's pay-per-view. It's limited. I'm not sure I even want to sit through the whole fight. But if I pay that much money, I'm going to sit through the whole fight. So I'm not going to pay that much money.
Yeah, and I certainly don't want to watch commercials on top of that.
Exactly.
Well, Scott, it's been a fun and exciting show for the All Tech Radio podcast, and we'll see you again next week.
Okay.